Welcome to the Making Kids Count podcast, brought to you by Kentucky Youth Advocates, where we sit down with policymakers, community leaders, and youth to discuss ideas to make Kentucky the best place to be young.
Thank you all so much for being here. We're really glad to have you all today. This just gives us a very different feel than the Rotunda has in previous years, and we're learning as we go, and I think we've got a couple of years to figure it out, so maybe next year looks different, maybe it looks similar, but I will say that we are really grateful, one, to our sponsors to make this possible, and also to our legislators who are here today to share their thoughts and wisdom and insight on what's happening during this legislative session. I know that we are still awaiting the arrival of one Senate member, but I think it's okay to jump in and introduce the two who are here, and we'll get started, and Senator Givens will join us as he arrives. So first, I'd like to start by introducing House Speaker David Osborne. I'm going to let him introduce himself, but if you would like to come up and come take a seat, and Senator Cassie Chambers Armstrong, if you'll come up and take a seat. We're going to pass this mic around, so we're going to get real close and comfortable here with each other. He can sit on the end. Hopefully he's not getting rained on his way over here. Again, appreciate you all being here indoors. I will admit, probably the best move today. All right, so just to preface, before we jump into the substance, many of the folks, as Terry had said, here are pretty well equipped and aware of what's happening within the legislature. They call their legislators, they're actively involved. So we're not going to start off by giving kind of a primer. We're going to start by really jumping in and digging into the issues at hand when it comes to kids and families. But before we jump into the 2026 legislative session, I'd actually like to travel back in time and talk a little bit about your all's childhood experiences. So through the Bloom Kentucky initiative in Kentucky, we have over 30 grant makers who have come together to address adverse childhood experiences. That's anything from poverty to parental incarceration to community environment factors that we know have poor outcomes for kids' health overall. We also know that on the flip side of that are positive childhood experiences, which create kind of a salve or a way to mitigate those adverse experiences for our kids. Based on your all's experience as Kentucky kids, the first question I have for you all is, can you talk a little bit about a person or a place that really shaped your experience in a positive way in Kentucky?
Hi everyone, I am Cassie Chambers Armstrong. I represent District 19, which is in Jefferson County. And I was actually born into poverty on the other side of the state in eastern Kentucky. My parents always like to tell the story of how they brought me home from the hospital to a rented trailer that they couldn't afford to turn the window air conditioning unit on because it would have made their electric bill too high that month. And although I was born into a family that struggled, I thought a nice meal out was going to McDonald's after church on Sundays. I wasn't aware at the time that I was growing up poor. And that's in part because I had three things. I'm going to talk about three things, not one. I had family. I had a really supportive, loving, extended family, a mother who was a first-generation college student who had me while she was in college, who believed that she had come so far from her holler in eastern Kentucky that there was nothing in the world that her daughter couldn't do, and she taught me that from day one. Had a lot of strong mountain women that raised me. The second thing I had was community. I had a larger network in my town, from church, from nonprofits, from my school, my really good public school, that set me up to succeed. And the third thing I like to talk about, I didn't know it at the time, but I had some help from government. I was on Medicaid. I got I don't think we called it SNAP back then, but received food assistance, went to college on Pell Grants, went to Yale on Pell Grants. And so I understand that it takes all of these things working together for a child to be able to take the journey that I had, from that rented trailer in eastern Kentucky to Yale, to Harvard, to the London School of Economics, and now to the Kentucky General Assembly. And so that's why I wake up every single day thinking about everything that came together, everyone that sacrificed, everyone that worked for the policies, that worked for me to have those opportunities. And my whole job here is to pay it forward. That is all I am doing in this role, is trying to make sure that more kids can make that journey. So I'm really excited for our conversation. Thank you.
I will not use this opportunity to make my normal joke about waiting on the Senate to show up.
I teed it up for you.
You did. Well, thank you. I'm David Osborne. I am state rep from the 59th District, which is Oldham County. I can't tell a story as inspiring as Cassie's, and it's interesting. It would be a much better story if I could start with a figure appeared to me in my dreams and compelled me to alter some course of life. But the fact of the matter is, I grew up a very blessed kid. I had parents who lived a servant's lives, and not formally. Other than my dad's military service, it was just service through their lives, whether that was through church, through volunteering, through whatever course that took. Everything was about something more than satisfying ourselves. So whatever role we took, and a lot of times those weren't. Sometimes they were formal things. Sure, we would take a trip to the shelters. We would we would organize fundraising, food drives, things like that. Church, but it was more about everything. Every part of our lives was built around doing something more than serving ourselves. And I don't think I really had full appreciation for that until both my mom and dad had passed. Because when I started hearing accounts of how they had impacted lives, it never really dawned on me how impactful they were just through normal service. I came to public service completely by accident. It was never my intent to be in the legislature. It was certainly never my intent to be in this role as speaker. But things evolved, and here I am. But I try to do the same thing. I try to make sure that every single day that we show up and we do everything that we can to improve the lives of Kentuckians. And I will make one comment. I do think that there are 138 legislators in the General Assembly. Every one of them has a different perspective on things. And I will disagree with Terry just a little bit. Every single one of those 138 people show up with the objective of making the lives of the people they serve better. That means that we may disagree on some of those things, but there's not one of those people that shows up thinking that they're going to make life harder on a kid in this state. They show up with the intent of making their lives better. That doesn't mean that we agree on those things. I think some of those ideas are great. I think some of them are horrible. That's why we have different color paints, because we understand how to disagree, and we understand how to agree, and we understand that we're all here to make Kentuckians' lives better. So I think that you will see that commitment throughout the entirety of this legislature.
So I'm David Givens, have the honor of being the state senator for the 9th Senate District. That applause is for you. So. They're clapping for you, Speaker. It is truly an honor to get to be with you today and to address this group, and also to represent the interest of my citizens in the 9th Senate District, a rural part of the state, serving 5 counties there in south central Kentucky. Grew up on the farm, Greensburg, Kentucky. Was fortunate to have a loving community, a church, public schools, just great support systems all around me. And I'm gonna jump off of a conversation about me in those early days to some thoughts I have as I've been now in the legislature for almost 18 years. And it's amazing. They do say, rightly so, the days are long, but the years are short. And time passes so quickly. It's just passed in the blink of an eye. But the thing that stunned me when I came here and continues to surprise me in a positive way day in and day out, and Speaker, you mentioned the 138, and I definitely see it with these two, along with all of my other colleagues. Everyone is here to be part of something bigger than themselves. And that's the beauty of government done right. And government done right is never going to be perfect. Government done right is better today than it was yesterday, and hopefully better tomorrow than it is today. So as long as we pursue that goal, I think we're moving in the right direction. One thing, and one secret tool that not a lot of citizens understand, and nor did I understand until I got here, is the continuity of government at the state level resides in the staff we have, the LRC folks that are so knowledgeable and so skilled and so patient and so kind, day in and day out, that staff us and do the work that they do, not just drafting the bills, but support services of facilities cleaning and cafeteria, and the smiles they have on their faces after long days is genuine and real. But I want to talk specifically about the LRC staffers that do the staffing of committees and the bill drafting for us. It amazes me that young, naive legislators arrive here with these grandiose new ideas, new in their mind ideas, for a piece of legislation that this LRC staffer has drafted about 4 times over the course of the last 10 years already, but the staffer keeps this professional, straight face, acting like it's the first time they've ever heard this idea. They'll be proud to work on this legislation for you. They quietly go back to their office, open the drawer, go back about 6 years, pull out the file with the bill in it, dust it off, put a new number on it, and present it to us in such a skilled way that we don't know, and they treat us with such respect. But they're the continuity that keeps government going. We come and go. I often tell folks, my name is David Givens, but I have the honor of sitting in the seat of the 9th Senate District. The title doesn't belong to me. The seat belongs to the people. I just simply happen to be the person, the placeholder in that moment in time. And it's been such a fun thing to get to do the policy work that we do, and especially in the youth advocacy space. So.
Thank you, all 3 of you. It's nice to get some insight on your all's background too, for folks to just see where you've come from and what shaped you over the course of your lifetime. So I know we traveled back in time. We're coming back to current day 2026. Speaking of public service, the budget being drafted is an incredible service that you all within the legislature get to do, have to do, however you see it. And you all are actively working on a budget for the first time without COVID funds in a couple of years. The considerations for what's coming down on the federal level through H.R. 1, and depending on the numbers and what we've heard, a little less revenue than we've seen in previous years. So out of curiosity, what we would really like to know is, what are your guiding principles when it comes to shaping that budget as a legislator, as a public servant? Speaker Osborne, would you like to start?
Well, since we've already sent the Senate a brilliantly constructed document, I will go ahead and talk about our perspective. Look, there is the absence of COVID funds, the absence of disruption from COVID certainly changes the dynamic that we are dealing with. The unfortunate part of it is we continue to be surrounded by uncertainty, and uncertainty is the enemy of good budgeting. It really is. We construct a 2-year budget theoretically every 2 years, and we do so in theory, and it is purely built in theory, and one that we make a lot of assumptions in. There is a lot of uncertainty because of the force downs of H.R. 1, changes in the Medicaid program, the uncertainty around the global economy, the uncertainty around the impacts of Kentucky's economy. Those all have to be factored into the process under which we derive a budget. That said, that doesn't impact the way we approach the budget. And the way we approach the budget, and the way we've approached it every year since 2018 when we wrote our first budget, is how to make Kentucky as efficient as possible. That doesn't mean spend less than we are. That doesn't mean spend more than we are. It means utilize Kentucky taxpayer dollars in the most effective and efficient manner possible. And truly, this will be the first time that we have really been able to dig down deep into the core of the budget, which is one reason the budget looks a little bit different this year, because we kind of started from scratch. Normally we will send the budget down to the Senate first week of February. We just got it out last week, and it was because information was a little harder to come by when we really started to get into the real details of what is in the budget. But it is our hope that we will look at every single place where we spend money and evaluate those things independently, try to find the things the government is doing most effectively, but also questioning if we're doing it effectively, can we do it better? Look at those things that we're not doing well. And I think everybody would admit that government fails in some areas. So when we look at those failing areas, are there ways to either improve those failures or replace those failures with something that does work? That's a constant evolving process. And in this year's budget's a little over $31.5 billion. And trying to prioritize those items is really difficult. But being able to find those efficiencies, to utilize taxpayer dollars in the most effective manner possible, to also be mindful that these are taxpayer dollars, and if taxpayers can spend them better themselves than government can, then we need to consider those things as well. Focusing on our real needs as opposed to just the things we want and how we want things to look. And that's oftentimes a difficult balance and sometimes very hard to arrive at consensus on. But the one thing that we continue to prioritize is our investment in education. An additional $369 million a year that we will spend on education this year. In this budget, at least in the one that we've sent to the Senate. And that is on top of record funding each of the last three budgets. So we continue to prioritize education. We continue to be mindful of the drain that Medicaid has on our budget. Incredibly important and invaluable tool that provides resources to those people that truly need it the most in Kentucky, but nearly $6 billion of that $31 billion will be spent on Medicaid. We've got to make sure that those programs are operating in their most effective and efficient manner, and that the programs that we are funding are truly reaching the needs of the people that we're trying to serve. So constant process of trying to figure out how to best utilize the dollars.
It's not easy. Senator Chambers Armstrong, would you like to respond?
Sure. So I keep a Post-it above my sink at home on the mirror that says 1 out of every 5 kids is living in poverty. And I see it every morning and I see it every night. And in the nighttime, I try to ask myself, what did I do today about that? Because those kids living in poverty, we talk about the cycle of poverty because it is a cycle, and when a child is born into it, that child is impacted by that for the rest of their life unless we do something. And so every day I try to hold myself very honest and accountable. What did I do today about that? And the kids living in poverty, they are all of our kids. They are our community, they are our citizens, they are our future. And my hope is that all of us, every single person, whether you're in the General Assembly, you work at a nonprofit, you are a community member, you also ask yourself every single day, what did I do for those kids today? Because we should all have ownership over our community and over our kids, over the future of our Commonwealth. And sometimes I think, whether I'm thinking about legislation, other legislation, the budget in particular, I think, what would it look like if we truly were dedicated to bringing all of the resources of government to bear on eliminating child poverty in this state? I cannot remember in our last legislative session a single dedicated anti-child poverty bill that we passed. And I've had this conversation with the speaker, and he's right. Children don't live in communities on their own. When we do things to help families, to help communities, to help our economy, that also helps children. But we pass all kinds of dedicated bills for all kinds of interests and all kinds of groups. What would it look like if we had a child poverty bill? If we spent that $6 million, which is a drop in that $30 billion bucket, to get rid of the sales tax on diapers, because in states that do that, you see fewer children showing up at the emergency room with severe diaper rash. You see parents, revenues don't go down because parents reinvest that money in other things for their children. What would it look like if we had a refundable child tax credit that for every low-income family that had young children in the home, it put money into their pocket to make sure that they could afford the many things? I have young children. I look at my credit card account every day and I'm just amazed. I'm like, it keeps going up and up and up and up and up. Because kids cost money, investing in kids costs money. What would it look like if we made sure that every family had the tools they need to access early childhood education, broadly defined? I like the idea of pre-K for all, but even if that's not the path we're going down, what would it look like to live in communities where every child, every family had options to understand that learning begins on day one and to access programs that would put their child on the right path? Because families that can afford them access those programs, and families that can't do not. And so my sort of challenge to you all is to think about what it would look like if we were truly laser focused on this. What would the ideas be? What would the organizations be? What would the conversations be? And leave here trying to make that a reality. I like this phrase, keep buggering on. And it makes me feel hopeful because I do think that child poverty is an entrenched problem, and I am never so arrogant to assume that we haven't solved it because smart people haven't tried to. I understand that a lot of very smart people have tried to unknot this tangle of child poverty for a long time, but we can do more, and we can't stop trying.
So 2 answers and 1 challenge to the question. I'm going to start with my 2 answers first. The question around the budget, guiding principles, what do we think about as we're going through the budget process? I'm going to share with you 2 quick thoughts on that. One of those is today, this session is the 10th anniversary. It's the 10th anniversary of Republicans taking the majority in the House, and they've been such great colleagues to work with. Over the course of the last 10 years, the things that we have done together have been so impactful in the lives of all Kentuckians. The Speaker mentioned the highest record level of funding for education in the history of the Commonwealth. Add to that the healthiest budget reserve trust fund / rainy day fund that we've ever had before. Money in the savings account in case we need it. We've totally eliminated, and the House has joined us in doing this, the use of funny money. Funny money is what we call structural imbalance. How many one-time dollars do we use for recurring expenses? You can't do that in your home, you can't do that in your business, and you don't want your government doing that. We've eliminated that completely. Highest record level of funding for pensions, to the point that we now have the bond rating agencies looking at our pension health and saying Kentucky's on the right track, which lowers the cost of borrowing for all the citizens of the Commonwealth. So we've had a very able colleague leaning into the space with us in the House, and that's been a great thing. That's answer number 1 to the budget process as we approach it. I think budget process number 2 is what I call the role of government answer. And I say this with great respect for my colleagues in the minority, my Democrat colleagues in the minority. I appreciate so much the voice they bring of all the citizens that they speak into. There's something, though, that Senator Chambers Armstrong failed to mention in her conversation with you about the things that shaped her life early. And I got here just in time. My apologies for being late, but I got here just in time to hear her answer. And it was a very eloquent, accurate answer. And your path is not one I knew, and I appreciate that. But there's a secret sauce she didn't mention that as I've gotten to know her, I see in her, and it is in all the sort of people that excel. It's that intrinsic motivation. It's that sincere spark inside that says, I'm going to take whatever life gives me and I'm going to make the most out of it. In that role of government, as we budget sort of question, we can't provide all opportunities to everyone and then fund them having that intrinsic spark. That's beyond the ability of government. We should certainly provide opportunities for all and hope all have that spark, but that spark is something inside each of us. So absolutely, let's find ways to create opportunities, access to those resources, but give everyone the freedom to choose their own path. So that's answer number 2. Now the challenge goes directly to her question about the anti-poverty bill. We've got an amazing one this session, and I'm going to share it with you, and I'm so glad to have this platform to talk with you about House Bill 1. All of us know, I think all of us in the room will agree, that one of the answers to poverty is education. I hope that's a sincerely held belief by all of us. House Bill 1 costs you $0 and can pump anywhere from $400 to $600 million annually back into the Kentucky Commonwealth to educate our kids. Very brief pitch on House Bill 1, and whether, as I said on the Senate floor, whether you vote for it or not, I'm hoping you're going to write your check to an SGO. This is a $1,700 federal tax credit. A tax credit is a dollar for dollar tax credit. The House sent us the bill. We put it on the governor's desk on Friday. Would you rather send your money $1,700 federal tax that you owe, would you rather send that money to Washington, D.C., or keep it in Kentucky with a scholarship granting organization to help kids in K through 12? It's a no-brainer. As we implement this legislation, starting with tax year 2027, you're going to have the chance for tax year 2027 to write that check to a Kentucky SGO. You direct the money where it goes. Now, you can't award the scholarship yourself, but you give it to the entity that awards the scholarships to Kentucky kids to help them in public schools to buy uniforms, to help them in public schools to go on field trips, to help them in private schools to pay for tuition, to hire a tutor, to attend a summer school program. There can only be good that comes out of this, and my encouragement is not only do you write the $1,700 check, this is a true anti-poverty bill, not only do you write that $1,700 check, become an ambassador. Tell everyone in your circle of influence, write that $1,700 check to a Kentucky SGO, keep the money here in the state, and let's address the educational needs of all the citizens. So I'm thrilled that we have this platform, this opportunity, and I hope you'll all take advantage of it.
Thanks, Senator Givens. I made 2 mistakes today. The second mistake was putting way too many questions down for folks to respond to. So in the absence of time, or the lack of time that we have here today, I want to make sure that we have an opportunity to give our panelists a couple minutes to talk about something that is really driving them this legislative session that they haven't necessarily gotten a chance to talk through. So I know that childcare and housing are big issues among both chambers, and we're seeing a lot of movement there. There's also been a flurry of education bills. We've also seen, as Terry had mentioned, bills related to juvenile justice. What do you anticipate this session, whether it's something that is giving you hope or energy, or something that you think folks should be paying attention to that you haven't talked about yet?
So I'll tackle this one first, and I'm gonna give you 2 answers, the first being the immediate, and then the second being the longer term. In the immediate sense, one thing you've seen us focus on the Senate side, we have our top 10 priority bills. We've focused a lot of those on education governance specifically, because there's a lot of concern across the Commonwealth in large school districts and small about the spending of money and oversight over school board operations, district back office operations, and whether money's being spent wisely or not. But one of those pieces of legislation specifically I want to speak to is one that we did, Senate Bill 2, and it's now in the House, and I'm hopeful and confident that the Speaker will lean into that legislation and give us a good hearing there. This is about teacher pay, and it's a simple piece of legislation that basically says no administrator can receive a pay raise greater than a frontline teacher. That's one of those pieces of top 4 pieces of education legislation we passed, because it speaks to where the impact happens. Yes, you got to have great support systems, you got to have great staff in the back office, you got to have all the support pieces to get the teachers the things they need to do the work. But man, oh man, you want to talk about people that make impact. Teachers on the front line, day in and day out, change the arc of kids' lives every day. And we've got to continue investing in them. So that's one piece of legislation I'm hopeful that we'll see. And again, that's in that immediate education sense. Longer term, something on the horizon that's both frightening, vexing, and full of opportunity is this conversation about AI. And I'm fascinated by the discussions about AI and how do we bend the use of that tool in directions that are life-affirming and life-giving and helpful to community and Commonwealth and citizens. And so that's a longer-term conversation that I'm engaged in watching and trying to help shape. It's not one you're going to file a bill and fix. It's one you're going to continue learning about, being invested in, and mentoring other young people, because the generation behind us, I'm blessed to have a blended family of 5 kids. They're all going to be gurus at AI. They're going to use it for great and wonderful things, I hope and pray. And so how do all of us in the room help shape other young people as they start to encounter those tools? So, thank you.
I will be evasive because, and I'm not going to give specific pieces of legislation, because I lead 100 members in the House, and if I mention one, they're all going to wonder why it wasn't them. But I think I will direct you toward what I think is a theme, and that is providing every kid with a better path forward. That doesn't mean a perfect path, but a better path. And I think when you look at the things that we have focused on so far this year, whether it be funding and education, whether it be housing, I mean, we have more housing bills filed this year than we've had probably in the entire 20 years I've been in the legislature. There's an old saying that, homes are where jobs go at night. You cannot expect for a child to thrive when it wonders about where it's going to find a warm place to sleep at night. So you look at things like that. You look at the incredible pressures that I certainly never faced, the incredible pressures that kids are facing today in social media. And we have a couple of bills to help try to combat some of those mental health crises that we're seeing caused by social media. All of those things, child care. How to find a better way to provide for those people that want to be in the workforce, that want to engage, want to improve the lives of their kids. But I think the common thing that you will see in all of those bills, whether it be education, health care, child care, housing, is that government is not the business model. Government can be a great partner in all of these things, but government cannot be the business model. And how we can do those things better, how we can provide a better path forward more effectively and more efficiently remains the driving force behind the way we will approach this session. I will give one quick plug to one of our House members, as Senator Armstrong mentioned her tax or sales tax elimination on diapers. I will give a shout out to Representative Vanessa Grossell, who thought that perhaps as a Yale educated attorney, Senator Armstrong doesn't need a sales tax cut on the products she buys. But for those people that are impoverished and do need those products, maybe we just provide those products for those people. Let's provide that trust fund that will not provide a $6 million relief that some people don't need, but will provide a $1 million direct infusion into providing to those products to people that are truly in need. So we always try to look at how to do those things better. Great idea that she came up with, but I think a great idea to make it better.
Yeah, and I actually, I was proud to work with Representative Grossell and file the mirror bill in the Senate, and so I look forward. I think that's a great piece of legislation that we can move forward in a bipartisan, bicameral sort of way, because I do think when I think about policy, I try to think about how are we helping the neediest. For my larger policies, my sort of larger thing for you all to keep in mind, yes, let's invest in our education systems as they exist. Let's invest in our public schools. Let's invest in our kids. Let's invest in learning. I hope that you all leave here today with an understanding that learning starts the minute a child is born. I imagine, based on faces I see in the room, that you all have that understanding. I'll never forget, I showed up to Metro Council. I got sworn into my first elected office when my youngest child was 6 weeks old. And I found out that we had an office for youth development in the city of Louisville, and I was so excited. I have a mom, I have young kids. What are we doing to develop our youth? What does that mean? What are the programs? And it turns out we were investing a lot of money in very good programs that we should be investing in, but they were all for youth sort of 16 to 25 who were struggling. And it was so clear to me that if we had invested some of that money on the front end, that we'd be investing less of that money on the back end, down the road. And so I went digging and found the studies because that's how my brain works. I want to see the evidence, show me the data. And it turns out that hunch is supported by a lot of research, that when you invest in kids early, a lot of these studies are about pre-K, but I'm going to talk about early learning because although I filed a bill to increase access to public preschool, you could probably knock me over with a feather if it made any traction this year. It's still important to keep talking about it, but I think it's important we talk about early learning more broadly as well. When you invest in early learning, you decrease justice involvement later on, you increase lifetime earnings, you decrease the likelihood that child will be dependent on government programs down the road. And so I am constantly trying to think of new ways that we can invest in early childhood education in our littlest learners. I got a bill in the Senate to increase access to Imagination Library, to specifically look at what we could do to make sure that our most vulnerable kids are getting access to it. Can we automatically enroll our kids in foster care through a collaboration with CFHS and make sure that Imagination Library is able to respect confidentiality but get those books out to those kids as they move from home potentially to other home? Are we able to, as part of the WIC or the SNAP process, make sure that when families are enrolling in those programs, they are also enrolling in Imagination Library to get books into their homes? Can we look at birth certificate processes like other states have, where when families are in the hospital, in areas where we have low enrollment, we have some counties that we have significantly less children participating than the state average. Could we look at, as part of the birth certificate process, making it easy for those families to opt in? So there are a lot of great policies that we can look at and a lot of great policies that we can work together on in a bipartisan way. And I'm looking forward to working with all of you to help Kentucky kids.
Please give one more round of applause to our panel members here. We heard such great wisdom, insight, persistence, passion, and I implore the three of you especially to keep buggering on, really. Hopefully for the next couple of weeks that are tolerable for you all as you move through this legislative session.
Thank you for listening to the Making Kids Count podcast. For more information and to listen to more episodes, visit kyouth.org/podcast. To support this podcast and our mission as the independent voice for Kentucky kids, please consider making a gift at kyouth.org/donate.